Hello everyone, this is Caryn DeFrees for Poli-Sci 303 Week 8 Depth Project. So for the success story that I chose, I found a story about Ethiopia's primary education success. And so the history of this and the nature of it is since the end of the Civil War in 1991, access to education in Ethiopia has increased significantly. The Civil War was 16 years. Um, Long, so as you can imagine, not much progress was really made, and there was definitely some other um, things that the government was focusing on at that time. But since the end of the war, 3 million pupils were in primary school in 1994 and 95, but by 2008-2009, this had risen by over 500% to 15.5 million. Um, in addition to expanding the public education system, the government also led an effort to reduce poverty, and this effort kind of went hand in hand with the increasing access to education. Um, Increased regional and local autonomy and community participation have played a key role. So it wasn't just the government implementing all these procedures, they really got the communities and the locals involved and showed the importance of education. And one of the main ways that they did this was by investing heavily. So they abolished all school fees. They increased expenditure on school construction and upkeep, and as well as hiring thousands of new teachers, administrators, and officials. And another thing that they did to increase access to education was to shift to the mother tongue instruction. So why I consider this a success is because the improvements in access to education have helped narrow the gender gap and have benefited the poorest. Traditionally, boys were more likely to attend school and less likely to drop out. Since 94 and 95, a number of initiatives have been implemented encouraging women's employment in the civil service, and as well as promoting gender-sensitive teaching methods and increasing the minimum marriage age to 18. In 2008-2009, almost full gender parity was achieved, which means that there is almost the same amount of boys enrolled in primary education as girls. So I had a bit of trouble finding limits to the success, especially on the website that I found this story on, because it was it had a really positive outlook on it. But I did come up with some. There are still substantial inequalities limiting access to education. And while it has been very beneficial to the very poor in Ethiopia, almost 40% of the the percentile of the poor are expected never to enroll in school. And another thing that is kind of a limit is that this expansion of education really only applies to primary school. It didn't really speak much about secondary school or anything beyond that for higher education. However, primary school is an excellent ground and basis for all these. It's imperative that you go to primary school in order to go to secondary school and continue on further. So I can see why they're focused on that. But after primary school, no other education is mandatory or supported by the government. Well, I don't know if it's supported, but it's not as widely supported or advocated for. And the implications of the success story for our thinking about development more broadly. So I have heard a lot about abolishing school fees all around Africa. I haven't really heard about it anywhere else, but I could have just not been paying attention, or maybe there weren't school fees to begin with. But I have heard a lot about how governments abolishing school fees for primary school is taking great leaps and bounds as far as development and as far as increasing school attendance all over Africa. And so I think that is a really important, um, I guess, lesson, but not really lesson. It's a really important thing to consider when considering development and what aids it. It's not just about making it accessible to everyone within the country, but also what can be learned from this is how other countries can learn from one another so development can kind of continue forward as a whole on a global sense. Another thing that I noticed for thinking about development more broadly was how they focused on making sure that gender equality was there within the schooling, because I've heard many times that gender equality is one of the key factors to developing, and empowering women is probably one of the best things you could do for that. And so I think this is really important and should be a factor of everything that goes into development. It should be considered pretty much with all pieces of this development puzzle. So I was really happy that the article I read mentioned that. All right, and that's about it for that. Thank you.